Hello, and welcome to another edition of From the Bars to the Bricks Prison Ministry. I am Kev, your favorite felon. Please like, subscribe, and share, comment. Want to hear from you. Man, today we're going to talk about Paul Harvey, and the excellent man. We're going to find out what his views and why he said what he said when he said you want to find the absolute scum of the earth go to any U.S. prison at shift change. He was referring to the guards. Why did he say this? Who's Paul Harvey and what makes this relevant? Well, for one, being in prison, I heard many stories over the years, and so I kind of wanted to get to the bottom of it, see if it was even true. For those of you who do not know who Paul Harvey was Paul Harvey Arant. It was his actual name. Was an American radio broadcaster for ABC News Radio. He his broadcast news and comment on mornings and middays and weekdays and at noon on Saturdays. He also had his famous "The Rest of the Story" segments that were heard on radio from all of my childhood and through adulthood from 1951 to 2008. His programs reached as many as 24 million people a week. From Tulsa, Oklahoma, also a fellow Virgo. That's kind of cool. Um, but Paul Harvey, and he always was it into shows, and now you know the rest of the story. Good day. And he always, what was he? He had this just way about him that was just people would listen to him, and it was really cool. And he always, one of his favorite quotes is, "I really like it. Tomorrow has always been better than today, and it always will be." And so, anyway, let's get into why Paul Harvey, why did he say, if you want to see the absolute scum of the earth, go to any prison in the U.S. during shift change? Now, some of the rumors were that his son was incarcerated and had been beaten and killed by guards or as a result of guards or something. I've heard a couple of variants of that. I heard it was another relative. I heard nothing happened, this and that. So I started doing some research and kind of was interested in this. And if he did say that and he did feel this way, why? Because here is a man that was very prolific in the news and very big on the judicial system, very religious, very moral, I guess, guy. So I started doing some research and I found some answers and some really, really interesting. And so here's one that said, my answers are coming from answer.com. Paul Harvey, these are the best ones I could find. Paul Harvey had a relative incarcerated in the prison system. One side of the story. Like most of the public, you do not hear much news about the prison system unless it's bad news. True. In fact, a lot of news places won't do good news stories on prisons because it's not new. It won't sell. Generally, a lot of what people hear comes from inmates themselves saying how they're being mistreated or abused by correctional staff, which is hardly the case. Just about everything you hear about the prison system is hearsay. Usually, claims of being mistreated come about due to an inmate wanting special treatment and hearing a word they did not want to hear, often before incarceration. No, Paul Harvey, while a wise man, had no idea what goes on within the walls other than what his incarcerated relative told him. Inmates rarely tell the reason why they're being punished. Rarely will they tell you they threw a cup of excrement on an officer or assaulted another gang member with a weapon, and that's why they're in solitary confinement. I want to comment on that. This obviously was a person that was probably law enforcement or very pro law enforcement, and they think that nobody's dirty and all that. Well, albeit I do partly agree with that. A lot of the times that's the case. People, it's exaggerated. They're after me. They this, they that. You know, whatever the case is. But there's a big case of the other side too, where it is that case. The cops are screwing with them. The cops are beating on them. The cops are treating them like withholding food and stuff they need and all that. And so there are those cases, and they're right. And let me go on with this one. Sorry, this has kind of got me. Every time I read it, it gets me worked up. And there are three sides to every story: the perspective of one party involved, the viewpoint of the other, and what actually happened. While it is true that there are those unhappy with the reality of their incarceration and the limits they face in that environment, the reality of the prison environment, which was illustrated in 1971 by psychologist Dr. Philip Zimbardo during his infamous prison experiment, which Mr. Harvey was very likely familiar, is one of antagonism and conflict between the housed and the keepers. To find evidence of the truth behind inmate allegations, one need only research news articles on correctional medical services, the largest private companies contracted to provide medical, dental, and mental health services in American jails and prisons. The fact is that in the U.S., out of sight is most often out of mind, and the incarcerated are out of sight, many of them deserving exactly any bad treatments they receive. Pardon the sarcasm. Strongly disagree on that. Strongly disagree on that. You are not sentenced to prison for punishment. The prison is the punishment. And all that extra shit, that's just extra. And that's bullcrap. It's not your job as the cops and the police to punish. It's your job to babysit and keep the guys doing what they're supposed to be doing. That irritates the crap out of me because and that you get the good officers and they'll tell you that it's not my job to punish you. Your punishment's coming to prison, being away from your family, being away from the free world, and having to go to food, eat when we want, bed when we want, go, get up when we want you to, whatever. And so yeah, that's completely yeah. um Keep in mind the warning offered by several attributed sources. A society is measured by how it treats its weakest members. There is no weaker member of society than that one from whom everything has been taken, including his or her freedom. With this in mind, consider the obvious results of that evidence by Zimbardo experiment and the very real fact that the average IQ of correctional officers in the U.S. is 90. Let me repeat that. The average IQ of correctional officers in the United States is 90, which is the very bottom end of average. The ironically funny thing about that is I used to joke about that. Said people only come to work at KDOC as a prison guard because they couldn't fill out the application at McDonald's. They couldn't figure out how to spell their name. And man, and some of them just don't have social skill, would not make it in a real job or in the real world because they just don't know how to treat people. And then what goes on to say another one response is because it's true, simple as that. COs are often even more ignorant than badge handlers, twice as hypocritical, and the vast majority are as racist as your average rich boomer. I could tell more than a handful of stories about COs beating, raping, killing handcuffed people, or setting them up for the same. There is no doubt the previous answer was posted by a CO or worse, the average parasite. And I would absolutely agree with that. I respect everybody's opinion, but that's not that's not true. And Paul Harvey, and other research, I found that he was actually, he wanted to highlight bullying and stuff and the problems that go on in prison by COs because they're under their care. Prisons are nothing more than a little grade school with a bunch of grown ass men. And the little rumors and backbiting and stuff you'd see in school, which includes bullies. They don't just wear blue. a lot of the bullies wear brown and black, and sometimes they wear suits and up to the front office or in the state office buildings or something. But it's a very big thing. We saw it a lot. El Dorado was terrible, terrible, terrible. The black suits there literally killed people, um, because of something they would do or something. So Paul Harvey basically was against bullying, and that is a huge problem in the prison systems, as these little young guards, especially as they lower the age lower and lower, because now you got these 18, 19-year-old kids that was beat up and tossed in their lockers and picked on, had their lunch money stolen. Now they're coming in as prison guards, and they want to write DRs. They want to talk all stupid to you, thinking they're untouchable because they wear that badge, like no one's going to whoop them. And that it just, it's happened. So, um, and you see, I get a little worked up. I've been bullied by the police. They used to treat me like I was Rodney King in L.A. In El Dorado. I get every time everywhere I'd walk, black suits pull me over and pat me down. It didn't matter. Walk across, they could see exactly where I went and come right back, watching my every dang move, and they'd search me again coming back just to harass me. They'd stop me periodically, harass me. They tore me and Eric's cell up numerous times, harassing me. Bullies. They were upset because I was doing too much positive stuff. I had too much movement. I had too much influence of administration because I worked with these people trying to get the facility better, trying to get more programs, trying to get more volunteers, trying to get things to help guys to become better men and to be able to release and stay out. On that note, speaking of staying out, in about 13 hours, all have been out 2 years. So, and in March, I'll been off paper for 2 years, which is completely awesome. But anyway, so now you know the rest of the story. Paul Harvey was actually on the prisoner's side on the fact of anti bullying, the guards bullying. And it made it worse because on the streets in the school or something, someone got bullied, and it wasn't as prevalent back when Paul Harvey's days. You didn't have as everything wasn't bullying. They kind of but like it is now. But the guards would go unregulated because nobody cared. Nobody misses some of these people when they die mysteriously. Nobody's going to investigate their death. Now, you know the rest of the story. Good day.